12th, 2017 at 12 p.m. We've got 7 items on the agenda. And I want to make aware that the one item, number 6, Out of the Shadows Theater Grant, want to put that off until and have it discussed at open council meeting. Okay? Got that? Okay. So item number 1, ordinance amendments, noise, smoke, and odors. Mr. Gridley.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. We're coming forward with some amendments to some existing ordinances to deal with problems that have been brought to city staff and police over the past few years concerning increased noise, excessive noise, unreasonable noise, and then emissions of smoke and I guess primarily smoke from vehicles. The existing code doesn't really give us or give the police department the tools they feel they need to address these issues and deal with the complaints from citizens. So we've tried to tweak the code, several code sections to improve that. The first one is section 4.15.040, which deals with parking facilities, public parking facilities. And this is, I think, arising primarily from McEwen Park, and we have people that are going down there, and Chief White is here, might be able to describe in great detail what's going on, but people will go down there in cars and rev their engines and kind of do crazy things with cars that result in, or motorcycles, but I think cars, excessive noise and blowing smoke. And what we're doing with this and the other regulations we'll talk about in a minute is try and regulate what I think would be characterized as unreasonable or excessive, that is, not just normal noise, not just something that happens as normal operating, but something that is just excessive. So that's in the section under the parking facilities. We've also added in this section and in the other sections we'll talk about the ability for for administration and the parks director or their designees to permit some of these noises, because we know, Carter Lane's coming up. That's going to be a noisy event. There's other events that are permitted by the city where we recognize there will be noise and other things. And so if a person gets a permit with certain rules and regulations, then they can engage in some of this noise-making activity that would otherwise be prohibited. So I can keep going unless somebody has a question about this specific amendment.
Okay, any questions?
So my question, and I forgive me if I didn't read through this in enough detail, but how does this affect the noise on the streets outside of the parking garage? And I'm referring specifically to motorcycles, that type of thing. Is that governed specifically by this hour window, or does this apply there too?
No, we'll get to that.
Oh, I'm jumping the gun.
As usual, you're ahead
Sorry.
of the game on everything. So I'll jump ahead because the next ordinance is, and that will be under the what was use of compression brakes, what we've now styled as additional prohibited conduct. But in the next section that we propose to amend is 5.24.010, and this is under the section that deals with amplified music. And so we have a section that deals with cars and with other sources of amplified music. And what we've done here is expand that a little bit. But again, it's tied to unnecessary, unusual noise, excessive, disruptive, annoying to a person of reasonable sensitivities. And so, you know, how would this go forward if somebody's doing something that is just excessive, unreasonable in the opinion of the officer or a complaining citizen? They could get a ticket. The ticket would ultimately, like any ticket, go to court. And if they don't think that that noise or what was going on was unreasonable, then they would not, they'd get out of the ticket. But I think, again, what we're dealing with is just the few people that are just really excessive in the use of our public parks and parking facilities. So then the last section is the one that had dealt specifically with compression brakes, Jake brakes, and the noise they make. That's 10.80.010. And we've amended that. It still includes compression brakes, but we've also added the operation of any automobile, motorcycle, or other vehicle, engine, or motor, blah, 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 in a manner as to create any loud, unnecessary, or unusual noise that is excessive, disruptive, and or annoying to a person of reasonable sensitivities. And again, this is designed, and then prohibiting the excessive or unusual emission of noxious or odorous matter, smoke, exhaust. The intent there is to give the police the ability to deal with the excessive and unreasonable noise. And much of it, I think most of the complaints come out of downtown, but it would give people, or the police, the ability to deal with that in neighborhoods or anywhere generated from the public streets. We also, again, have put in a permit, an exception that would allow permits to be issued for events. I mean, even like an Ironman, you're going to have a lot of noise, amplified music. Car to lane, you're certainly going to have motor vehicles creating loud noise for a period of time, but it'll be a regulated, permitted time. So. And that's it.
Any more questions?
So here's kind of the follow-up that made me wonder when I read this, and I see that you went through these sections and moved this out to streets, but there's a lot of motorcycle groups that like to come to Coeur d'Alene, and they camp, and they ride their motorcycles, and part of that is going up and down our main street. And so I guess I'm thinking that a lot of them are older groups. I know a firefighter group out of Boise that comes up here and does that. So how are we going to keep from innocently entrapping these people? It just feels like I'm going, we're trying to encourage this tourism group, and that's a big following, but their motorcycles are loud. And now we're going to have an ordinance that kind of, help me out with that.
Well, I'm going to go camping when they come to town. That's an issue. And so I think what we're trying to address are complaints of excessive noise. And so motorcycles, cars, they have standards. Their mufflers should meet certain standards. Now, these get modified and to create more noise are louder. And so if a group or an individual were violating this, they could be warned, could be given a ticket. So it's the, I suppose it's a tension that between any regulation that you guys have to struggle with, addressing a community problem or a complaint from citizens versus, as you say, we're a tourist community. We want to encourage people to have fun, but so where does that balance lie?
And maybe, do you know if any of those groups that do those rallies, do they get permits from the city? Or only if they're going to meet on city property, or?
Yeah, the only permit they would need is if they were going to actually do a parade or do a but I don't think, or if they were going to camp or they were going to hold an event on city property like anybody else, they'd have to get a permit. If they're just riding through as a group, it's all free.
I have a question. I'm guessing that there'll be some training with by Chief White to his staff on what is obnoxious and unreasonable noise versus standard noise, maybe from a group on motorcycles, and the discretion of the officers to weigh the intent. You know, motorcycles can be loud, but there's the revving of the engine and being a little bit unreasonable, as some may say, that your officers will weigh that before they approach them.
And my answer can probably address some of your concerns as well. So a motorcycle group or any other car group or whatever is driving through our streets, if they're just using the street as a thoroughfare, we don't have an anti-cruising ordinance. There's nothing to prohibit them from driving up and down Sherman several times. However, if you stop at a red light and you purposely rev your engine several times, that could be looked at as unreasonable. Or if you make some major modifications to your exhaust system or something like that to, you know, try to make it extremely loud, that would be unreasonable, especially if you're, once again, sitting at a stoplight or in a McEwen garage or someplace else and revving their engines. That's really what kind of prohibited conduct that we're talking about. Someone just passing through our streets, there's very little we can do in the way of enforcement, even the way this new ordinance is written, unless it's extremely loud. You get a race car, for instance, or something like that that's, you know, clearly designed and been modified and that sort of thing. We can take action, but this is mostly designed for the people who are purposely just making noise, not the people who are just traveling on our streets.
Good. I would hope we can do some kind of outreach to some of the campgrounds and hoteliers and that kind of thing so that they have a heads up if they have those kinds of groups. You know, there's even some, you know, car clubs and motorcycle clubs that I know that come into this area, so that'd be great if we could let them know to just give them a heads up in advance. There's this new ordinance, so we just want to have you have a friendly reminder, so that'd be my only other thought there.
I'm not sure how we would contact them unless we're notified beforehand that they're coming. There's so many different groups that come and recreate in our area. I don't know how we would do the outreach.
I think a press release.
But we could certainly do something on our Facebook site or something like that to notify them.
Yeah, exactly. Or Facebook, or press release that's directed towards, you know, folks who know that they're coming in, and, you know, event managers and hoteliers and that sort of thing. So I just appreciate that.
And I would think even the motorcycle shops, you know, if you're coming through, you're going to be aware of, is it Lone Wolf or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they say, watch out for Coraline.
Well, it's new for those clubs that have been here and been doing that, and so it just feels like we'd be a little proactive to just at least try to let folks have a heads up.
Is this gonna be, hard to enforce?
You know, it's like anything else. If we have an officer in the right time in the right place, we can take enforcement action. If we get information from a citizen, especially detailing a license plate or something like that, and they're willing to assist, then we can take enforcement action. Beyond that, it's mostly, like Councilmember Miller pointed out, it's going to be a little bit of a public relations thing, some information putting out to the public, and kind of a continual reminder at the beginning of every summer. Remember, these are the rules. Please try to abide by them and that sort of thing. I will say, through our enforcement efforts over the summer, we are going to have a bit of an increased presence downtown, so we might do a little bit better in that regard.
Jim?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members, I wanted to share with you that we are the recipients, as well as the PD, of the complaints about noise downtown. And so, yeah, first to go to Councilman Miller's question, and as the chief was saying, they have discretion, and they'll get their heads up because our officers will say, hey, you can't do that here. And then if they continue to do it, then it's appropriate to cite them. But the officers don't want to cite them anyway. They want them to know that this is inappropriate and don't do it in our town. And that's the way this will be handled. But on the other hand, we don't want the continuous noise because we're trying to build a downtown community that's also a residential community, and we're trying to make it work for them as well.
Okay, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to Municipal Code that regulate the creation of noise and emission of smoke and odors.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I oppose. Okay, item number 2, school resource officer. It's gonna be nothing but a headache.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ready? So the first one that you have before you is in regards to the District 271 School Resource Officer Program. This is just the updated contract. It's been going on since 1999. We've had a relationship with the district that long. The new number this year is $379,807 with some change there. There's a little bit of wording change to the contract, not much. It was really just some house cleaning things that both our attorneys and theirs agreed to. And the biggest one I think you're going to find on page, it's actually underneath item number 3, control and jurisdiction, and it just really mandates that the school district provide liability insurance to cover our officers. I'd stand for any questions in regards to that.
Okay, any questions?
Just a question on the school, what prompted the school resource officer unavailability for an extended period of time thing?
Sure.
So
So, yep, good question. During the school year, especially this past school year, we've got officers that'll take vacation time or comp time, use those balances that they have to take some personal time off. The other part of it is when they end up with maybe some lengthy time off because of some sort of injury or illness. And so what we're looking for is just to make sure that the district understands that we will continue to provide an officer when needed and reasonable throughout the duration of the off time from the original SRO.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, need a motion.
I would make a motion to renew the school resources officer agreement with the changes with School District 271 as presented.
Second.
Any more discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, item number 3.
Like the previous one, this is a renewal of a school contract with North Idaho College. Just updating the expense there, $76,009 is going to be the new dollar amount for them. That takes into consideration 12 months of school year. Our SRO is down there the entire time, working the campus and the area around that. Like the other contract, we had some of the same changes in regards to providing liability insurance, and also that we'd make sure that there was an officer available if there's any long, lengthy duration of time that the original SRO was off. I'd stand for any questions on that.
Okay, any questions? Need a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the 2017, the renewal of the school resource officer contract with North Idaho College.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thanks, Steve.
You betcha. Have a great day.
Item number 4, amendment to Municipal Code to allow sampling of beer, wine at permitted special events. Kathy Lewis.
Hi.
Kathy.
We have a request to come forward from our farmers market, the downtown farmers market that's held on Wednesday nights on 5th Street to allow sampling of wine. Under our current code, it does not allow any sampling of wine. And the winery requested this last year. We now have a second winery that's also requesting the same thing. And Idaho code has also changed to allow beer sampling of 1.5 ounces at the maximum. And so the police are supporting this, and the Downtown Association is also supporting this. So I come forward to ask for your permission to change the code to allow sampling of beer and wine on public streets with they would have to have a special event permit in order to do this.
Okay, I had a question. They're gonna have this, are they gonna be in a certain location?
Yes, they'd have to be roped off and stay inside that roped off area in order to serve the samplings. So they can't just walk down the street with it or walk through the market with it. They'd have to stay in that contained area at that vendor.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
Any
Kathy,
questions?
is that contained area required by state statute, or is that city code?
City code, we require that so that we don't run into the open container violation. so that enforcement also is easier for our police department to monitor that as well.
I wish Chief White hadn't left. I had.
Yeah, it's just a sampling only. It's not like a glass. It's only 1.5 ounces. But they said that the vendors are having problems selling their wine without somebody having a taste of it first.
And I have a question.
Okay.
In this case, would the roped-off area be their specific vendor booth, or would it be
Yes.
the farmer's market
No, it'd be their specific booth.
booth? Okay.
And who's gonna police it? The city police will,
Yes.
okay. Any other questions?
No, I just have a comment, or possibly a question. In here, in section 5.08.160, I keep reading this, and how does this apply to the city parks?
We have a
alcohol
different code section that applies to city parks that allows for City Park and also McEwen Park and Riverstone. There's a specific in the parks part of the code that allows alcohol to be consumed on those locations.
I guess I'm looking at something I'm starting to feel really concerned about, and that's that we have, this is now the 10th exception to this code, and we have a whole nother code that governs the same thing on different public property, i.e. parks, but only 3 of the parks, not all of the parks. And I feel like there's going to need be some further discussion on how convoluted this code is starting to become. So I don't have a fundamental problem with allowing this, but the enforcement and the monitoring and the inconsistencies through all of these public properties and where they are is, I think for the general public, in order to maintain that open container law overview, is just going to become a real struggle. You have a bicycle that you can drink on, and a area in a farmer's market you can, and a park you can, and a city sidewalk you can, but 2 feet over on a city sidewalk you can't. And I just feel like we're adding more and more layers to deal with a certain specific business issue every time it comes up. So I guess that's my comment. I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve this, but I'm wondering if how we should go about bringing further discussion to full council on it. Or if you too felt that there was any need for that.
Maybe something to talk to staff with about. You know, they can give some recommendations on how to handle that if council was so inclined as well.
Okay, sounds good. I don't have anything else. That just is, my comment is I just think this is another unnecessary layer of confusion to that particular topic, so.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Now, is the police department and the downtown association, they all in favor of
Yeah,
this?
they're supporting us. It says, as long as it's just a taste, they're supporting it.
The what?
As long as it's just a taste, they're supporting it.
They need a motion.
Okay. Kiki, you mentioned you were going to make a motion. Would you like to, or would you like me to take it?
You should.
Okay. I'll make a motion to amend Municipal Code 5.08.160 to allow for sampling of beer and wine at permitted special events.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. 1 in favor, 2 opposed.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we take that back to staff.
Okay.
Okay, and the next thing I have,
Mr. Chairman, does
Go ahead.
that mean it still goes forward to council for consideration, or is it held at this level?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I say just stays here
Okay, thank you.
unless somebody wants to bring it up, but
May I make a comment? I believe this could have unintended consequences for some of our local vendors based on our perception of wanting to clean up code. And I worry that we're passing some of our cleanup responsibilities onto a vendor who really has no control over that situation. And that saddens me a bit, because I don't want to prohibit them from doing business and offering samplings and being part of the fabric of the community. The farmers market is such a great part. And I feel like we're punishing them for something we can do on the back end at a later date.
I agree, and I think that's my reason for, I don't want them to, I think that that's a good venue for that. And how would you want to buy the wine unless you could taste it? So it's kind of one of those things that goes hand in hand, and it makes sense and you can control it. So is there a way that we can direct staff at this point to take a look at the overall, help me with the words here, but
Ordinance.
the overall ordinance in this code and its multiple layers that are just becoming really prohibitive and inconsistent, and is there a way that we can approve this piece along with directing staff to take a look at maybe the whole conflict within the open container law itself?
We certainly can.
Well, let's do this then. Let's send it back to staff to look at what Kiki mentioned, and then come back to at our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm wondering if we're going to try to do that. Probably we won't get that by your next meeting. So we probably should try to get some public input on that as well. So that could take a while.
My only thought is our next meeting may be compromised because of our vacations.
Yeah, the general services is probably going to be, or the next general services meeting, both Mrs. Evans and I will be gone, so.
And in the meantime, the farmer's market continues with this vendor suffering. And that's my only thought, is we're placing the consequence on this vendor, and I just want to make sure that we're okay with that.
Well, I think, basically, I think that they went this far and this long without having the experiment. A little longer isn't going to hurt them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 5, request for destruction of records.
This item's just a housekeeping. The police department has records that need to be destroyed. They've reached their retention schedule, and so just need permission to destroy those records.
Okay, need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the destruction of records as listed pursuant to Idaho Code 50-908.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item number 7, contract extension with MH for art education. Sam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson and members. I'll make this very brief. This is a cleanup issue. The City Council last year approved a certain amount of budget for Emerge to provide arts education in the city of Coeur d'Alene. However, for some reason, when the contract was written, it didn't align with the full budget year. It stopped in March. I apologize. I would note my staff report says March 2015. That should be March 2016. That's the when that was ending. Actually, it should be March 2017. And you can see how this cold's going for me right now. But basically, we're just trying to make sure that we align what the council's already approved for budget through the end of the fiscal year with the contract. So all this would do is allow for us to sign a letter of agreement with them acknowledging that the contracts will stop at September 30th, and they will continue the great work they're doing for the budget year.
Any discussion?
No.
Need a motion.
I'd make a motion to have City Council authorize a contract extension to the end of the fiscal year for arts education provided by Emerge via a letter of agreement.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thanks, Sam. Anything else? We're adjourned.
What happened to Out of the Shadows?